America has a tendency to do over their allies. Why should we expect this time to be any different?
I'll give that to the American on the panel, Senator.
Well, I think, first off, the United States recognizes that our national security is inextricably linked with the trust that our allies have in us. And I think for the United States, for the American people, the reality is that Australia and the United States have fought together through major world wars, World War I, World War II, the Gulf War. And I think for us, for our government, for our public, we see Australia as a sister country, a country that shares culture and language and history, and countries for whom our destinies are inextricably linked. And so what I would say is that our country, both our government and our people, are committed.
I think Shane was also getting to the point, Shane, if I'm reading you rightly, about America's ongoing support for Ukraine. Is that right?
For Ukraine.
If we look at the Afghanistan experience, for instance, there are a lot of people in Afghanistan, Sharan Burrow is nodding to this, Sharon, I'll put it to you, who may have been saying, where are the Americans now?
Well, mistakes have been made by many nations, including, of course, the US, around foreign policy initiatives. And as somebody who, spent a sleepless set of weeks trying to get people out of Afghanistan, I don't personally believe that the speed and the haste and the lack of security for Afghanistan people, particularly women. But I could say similar things about other countries in regard to Syria, where we've still got ongoing conflicts. There are, in fact, if you go to 2014, then you could actually look back, and I think Angela Merkel admitted this, that in 2014, when the agreement was struck around those territories, the work that should have gone on
Donetsk, Luhansk.
The
Minsk agreement you're talking about.
Yes,
right.
The work that should have gone on, that was part of that treaty, didn't. And so in that context, yes, you can look at foreign policy mistakes, but can I say, it's now intractable. And as somebody who has had members in Russia, fantastically brave members in Ukraine, who I'm very proud of, even though I've just stepped down from my former role, they're still part of the family I love, then I can tell you that this is intractable. Anybody who's met Putin, sat down with him...
Which you have?
Yes, several times.
Do you want to share that experience with us?
Well,
what you could glean from that, at least.
I've met Putin a number of times, and I would have said there was narcissism there for sure. And, I don't think that's disputed. But now, this is a man who does not know how to engage. So while all walls should come to an end, and I think, Professor Brandis now was actually alluding to the fact that peace scenarios are always to be encouraged. But seeing this man in operation, and I once stood on a stage with him co-launching a union conference where I understood things I hadn't before, with his absolute vitriol against the West. Now, you can debate whether some of those things are right or wrong, but the vitriol was visceral in hatred. So while none of us could have predicted the invasion until those few months before, nevertheless, this is not a man who's going to back down while ever he's in power. And it's really a threat to the freedom, the democracy, the systems that we all care about.
I'll just say, and I appreciate the clarification on the question because I heard us, so I assumed you were talking about Australia. I think one of the important notes that I want to make sure I stress here is that Afghanistan, after 20 years, did not have a government that was able to govern its country, that it was able to amass the kind of power, monopoly on violence to be able to maintain the peace. And after 20 years of U.S. intervention there, the reality was nothing was going to change. Whereas what we have seen already in Ukraine and what we continue to see is not only a people that are standing up to Vladimir Putin, but a government that is fully capable of governing the nation, of not just repelling and protecting the people, but of actually maintaining the peace when peace does come.
That may also be an argument for staying in Afghanistan, isn't it, to protect people because they don't have a government to protect them?
Well, I think at the end of the day, the reality is that nothing was going to change. And so I think the president made a prudent decision to say, We have to be responsible about where we're exercising American intervention. And in this case, the circumstances on the ground just did not call for us
Let's
to
go
maintain.
quickly to the ambassador on that. Yeah.
So, elaborate on the 2014. This is exactly what has happened. Putin invaded Ukraine, grabbed Crimea, occupied parts of Donetsk and Luhansk, and the reaction was pretty weak. Sanctions were imposed, but they were not strong enough. European countries continued trading with Russia, building and finishing the pipelines to supply gas. The leverage was growing. And in a way, Putin figured that if he could do it, and he was allowed to do it, he can probably go and invade Ukraine entirely. Get it done in 3 days, and everybody's just going to accept it. What he didn't actually expect, well, he didn't expect that huge resistance coming from Ukraine and the resilience and unity of the West in helping Ukraine. What he's now betting on is actually for you to get tired of that, tired of war, you know, volatility on the commodity markets, surging prices for gas and whatnot, and everybody will get tired and will say, oh, sit down, we have to come up to some sort of solution. But there could be only one solution. That solution should be on Ukrainian terms, and that solution should respect full sovereignty of Ukraine. That's the solution we are looking for.